So if you change the ownership to an LLC, then the owner of the property is no longer you and all of your personal assets. The owner is this new single asset entity we created called the Limited Liability Company. So if there's a lawsuit, the claimant is filing a lawsuit against the owner, which is the LLC. And if the judgment is rendered, it's the LLC that pays the judgment. So right there, what you've done is you've taken the risk away from your personal assets and you've put it into the LLC.
If you own a rental property or you're expecting to inherit one, you've probably heard that an LLC can help to protect your assets. But what does that really mean? When is it helpful to set up an LLC? And should you lump all of your properties into one LLC or set up separate ones for each property? In this video, I'm interviewing business succession attorney Michael Carney, who's going to answer all of these questions for us and teach us how to reduce risk and preserve your legacy, especially if you want to keep inherited property in the family. Please take a look. Hi, everybody. I'm so excited to introduce you to my good friend and colleague, Michael Carney. Michael is a business succession planning lawyer, and he does a great job with figuring out how do we get businesses passed along to different folks? How do we make sure that rental properties are protected? And so I want to thank you, Michael, for coming on our channel today.
Hi, Ellen. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Yes. All right. So I want to dive right into it. One thing that often comes up with my conversations with clients, as you know, I specialize in special needs planning and we do regular estate planning and trust administration, but I don't do a lot of business planning. And one thing that I get a lot of questions about it are LLCs, limited liability companies, corporations?
Companies.
Companies, thank you. Okay. So can you tell us, because I think that you prepare these, right? Can you tell us what is an LLC and when might somebody want to use one?
Yeah, an LLC is a business entity, and basically we have three kinds. We have corporations, LLCs or limited liability companies, and then we have partnerships, and those have different varieties. Those are the three ways of organizing ownership so that you can accomplish a number of different objectives for the particular business in question. We use corporations for certain kinds of things. Partnerships we probably don't use quite as much anymore because LLCs do the job that partnerships used to do. They're a lot easier to run and set up, and we can talk a bit about that. But those are the main three types.
Okay, so it sounds like it's good for businesses and it's good for, I mean, because sometimes it comes up in my practice with like rental properties. So how is that a business to hold rental properties? Can you tell me more about that?
That's probably one of the most common situations we use LLCs. And the reason why an owner of a rental property would consider it is that they want to manage their personal liability. If somebody owns a piece of real estate, and let's say it's a Airbnb apartment, or it's a small apartment building or a duplex, you can't really control who's coming and going on the property, and consequently, you don't know what's happening there as a general matter. And if someone's injured or there's something that happens on the property, you might be sued as a landowner and might have to come up with compensation. So the idea there is the property owners want to limit that to the extent that the law allows. And the best way to do that is to create an LLC, and you own your property through the LLC. Basically, what that accomplishes is it changes the owner from you, and you own your other assets, to the LLC. And the LLC only owns one asset, and that's the property that we're putting into it for liability management.
Okay, great. So then if you do have a slip and fall on the property, but your property is held in an LLC, what does that accomplish? How does that work?
Well, when someone files a lawsuit against another person, if they win the lawsuit, then the losing person has to pay a judgment. Typically, that's money damages. The court will order the amount of money that has to be paid to the claimant or the plaintiff. And if if you're involved in a lawsuit, then because you as a person are the one that's liable, that means if the judgment is entered against you, you have to dip into your personal resources and pay the judgment. So if you change the ownership to an LLC, then the owner of the property is no longer you and all of your personal assets. The owner is this new single asset entity we created called the Limited Liability Company. So if there's a lawsuit, the claimant is filing a lawsuit against the owner, which is the LLC. And if the judgment is rendered, it's the LLC that pays the judgment. So right there, what you've done is you've taken the risk away from your personal assets and you've put it into the LLC.
Oh, okay. Okay. So if you have an apartment complex that's worth $1 million and you have another $4 million of assets and they sue you for, say, $2 million, only that $1 million in the LLC, if they're suing you over that apartment complex, would be exposed? Is that?
Yeah, that's right. So what'll happen is the LLC will have to, in some cases, pay the judgment if it loses. And what's at risk is what the owner owns. The owner, being the LLC, owns the apartment building. Now, if there's another piece of property in there, or let's say there's an operating bank account that holds cash from rents, that also might be available to the creditor. So whatever the LLC owns becomes available to the creditor if they win their judgment. Now, that being said, Ellen, it's not a simple matter to just reach in and take those assets out. LLCs make it considerably harder to do that. You have to get what's called a charging order, and that's additional time and money. And then you have to start basically going after the LLC and its management, seeking distributions if they're going to be made. And so what it does is it discourages unnecessary litigation, and it focuses the parties' efforts on resolving a claim more quickly.
Yeah. So maybe you pay a lower settlement amount just to make it go away.
Yeah, generally.
I love it. Okay. So now as you're describing it, because I have some people who ask me, should I put like if they have several rental properties, should they put all of them in one LLC or should they do separate LLCs for each? From what you're saying, it kind of sounds like they should do separate ones if they really want to limit the liability for each. Is that true or am I thinking about this wrong?
Yeah, that's a great question, Ellen. That's exactly the first thing we think about, and that is how many LLCs. And the way I look at it and is that if you have one LLC, you're better off than having nothing, right? Because if you have a rental property and you say, I want to limit our liability and you put it into an LLC, then you've now accomplished you're isolating the liabilities to that one property. If you've got more than one property and you say, do I want two or more LLCs? If you keep it simple and you just put them in one, you're still better off. And the reason why is your home, your brokerage account, your hard-earned savings, that's all separate from that LLC now. So just doing one LLC is an improvement. And then what we do is we look at the particular properties in question and you say, one, do we need more than one LLC? And two, what's going on the property? So for example, a single family residence with a retired couple that pays their rent on time and they send you some Christmas card and they're really
Oh,
friendly.
sounds like a dream. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Yeah, so are you going to worry about them having a party with people getting into trouble and things like that? Probably not. That's probably a stable tenant. We don't really worry about liabilities so much from that kind of a property. If you've got a duplex or a small rental, that presents a different set of liabilities. You've got people coming onto the property that you don't know. The tenants might be different and they might have parties or something like that, or they might be running into trouble or who knows what. Anything can really happen. So in that case, you'd say, well, that's probably a more problematic asset. It's going to generate, if there's going to be a lawsuit, it's probably coming from that one and not from, mom and pop in the single family residence. In that case, you may want to put that multi-unit property into a separate LLC and then hold the single family residence, maybe keep it in your own name if you're not worried about it. Or if you want to be cautious, then create a separate LLC for that. The issue, Ellen, is if you put more than one property into the LLC, you're bulking up the assets that become available to a creditor
Yeah,
of the LLC.
that makes sense. That makes sense. Okay, terrific. Well, I bet one of the considerations of how many LLCs you should do is how hard is it to create and maintain an LLC? Can you address that?
Yeah, the reason why people like LLCs as opposed to corporations in large part is they've simplified how we set them up and how we operate them. The setup is a lot easier than a corporation. We file articles of organization with this California Secretary of State. And once that's been approved, then we create what's called an operating agreement. And that's a document that specifies the ownership, how the property is managed or how the LLC is managed, and how it's transferred. What happens when the owner dies? What happens when they retire? What if somebody wants to sell? That's how you set up an LLC. And then the final step is we fund it. We transfer the real estate into the LLC. And in California, people are worried about Prop 13 and change in ownership. Are my property taxes going to go up? Well, when you transfer it in the LLC, it doesn't because the owners before and after are the same. Now, corporations are a little different. You have to file the articles of incorporation with the Secretary of State, but then you have to issue stock, you have to do annual minutes, you have to create a set of bylaws. There's a lot of compliance that goes into corporate organization that we don't have with an LLC. So for that reason, people tend to prefer LLCs. They're easier to set up and they're easier to operate.
That's good to hear. Wow, I like that. I like that. Okay, now, so what if somebody says, LLC sounds nice, but even so, even though it's easier than a corporation, maybe I don't want to go to that hassle, maybe I don't want to pay the money. What are some alternatives if you're still worried about some sort of slip and fall or party? Or I even heard somebody, some family did an indoor fire pit
Yeah.
because all sorts of smoke. Like you just never know what people might think is a good idea, right? So in that situation, what are some alternatives?
Well, the first thing they should do is get rid of all the trampolines on their property. Okay.
Oh man, my kids love our trampoline. Ah,
Right.
really? That's a big issue?
Yeah. And so the next thing they should do is if they're not using an LLC, make sure they have enough insurance. Um, you need a general liability policy and you probably want an umbrella policy. That's become more of an issue for my real property owning clients in California because of the difficulty of placing insurance here. So you want to pay attention to that. You want to make sure you're getting enough coverage, $1 million for a rental property at a minimum. And so you want to get the maximum insurance coverage you can get. The other thing you should be doing is just responsibly managing the property. Know your tenants, have a written rental agreement, and make sure the property is in good repair and good condition and be active with your management. Don't forget about it. You should drive by, make sure you know your tenants and make sure everything's in good shape. That goes a long way to helping to manage liabilities. What I tell clients is setting up an LLC is important for managing liabilities, but it's not the only thing you do. You also do those other things I mentioned.
That's such a good point. I love all of that except for getting rid of the trampoline. That
Yeah,
we're gonna have to wait until our boys are a little bit older to do
sorry
that.
about
But
that.
no, that's okay. But I think you especially make a good point about just the upkeep. Like, preventative care is always the best approach, right? So
Yeah.
being able to see, okay, how are things going every month? Making sure that you're checking in early and often to avoid, and then maybe the tenant can tell you, hey, there's this crack that's come up on the sidewalk. I think we need to fix that before somebody trips over it. Like, how much better to get that news than to get the news, hey, somebody tripped and broke their ankle and now they're going to sue you, right? So very good point. Great. So Michael, we're going to put below how to contact you, although I see it's in your background too. Great job. I like that. You help with business succession if people are owning a business as well, because we haven't been able to talk about that on this one, but maybe we'll do another video talking about that. And then also, you also help with creating LLCs for properties like these?
Yeah, that's right. The core of my practice is business succession planning, and so what that means is I advise clients on the issue we've been talking about today, which is what's the best way to own our rental property, or if you have a small service business or you're a shareholder in a business with some partners, that requires structuring the ownership and then also integrating that with the revocable trust to make sure that what happens when they die and retire? Is the business
Yeah.
going to keep going on? Is it going to sell? And if so, how does that work? That's partly what I do.
Excellent. Well, I love that. And thank you so much for coming on and sharing your great wisdom with our audience. Great. All righty. Take care. As you can see, LLCs aren't just for business owners. They can also be smart tools for families who want to protect their properties and avoid messy ownership disputes down the line. Now at Cookman Law, we don't prepare LLCs right now, but we're happy to help you with creative estate planning solutions for challenges that you might have. Please click the link below to schedule a consultation. We'll help you find the structure that fits your goals.
If this video is helpful for you, share it to someone else who might benefit from it.